Hi, Dr. Alex here, and welcome to one of my very occasional technical videos where I'm talking about some computer-related issues which are more generally related to my video production challenges and how to overcome them. Specifically in this video, why I upgraded from OpenShot 1.4.3 into 2.4 and then went back again. Before I get dragged too deeply into the nitty-gritty of this video, I'll quickly lay out the different sections into which this video will be divided. Section 1 will be the introduction. Section 2 will be the wonderful OpenShot upgrade, i.e. how they upgraded their software recently. 3 will be the Audacity weirdness that occurred with the system upgrade. 4 will be the Linux Mint system upgrade itself. And 5 will be my concluding remarks. So without further ado, let's move to Section 1, the introduction. Now, I'm not a wealthy guy, and as a result, two things have arisen. One, I tend to use older, second-hand laptops that are of a robust type. In other words, I primarily use IBM or Lenovo ThinkPads, mostly in the 200 series, although the most recent one I've purchased is in fact a larger T410, but all have similar processing power. They all tend to have i5 quad processing CPUs and around 4 to 8 gigs of memory. As each one became old or suffered physical damage, they then got hived off to other tasks. For example, my media server from which I project films is one of my old X200 ThinkPads, which has a key or two missing. And the other retired ThinkPad X200 is my one and only Windows machine, which is only a Windows machine because it's easier to get that one running as a MIDI instrument module for my keyboard, otherwise known as the Yamaha 810 electric piano. However, a series of unfortunate events led to the demise of my most recent X230 ThinkPad and ultimately led to the procurement of the T410 ThinkPad and the upgrade of the operating system. And so the troubles began. As mentioned, the original system was an X230 ThinkPad running Linux Mint 18.3 with the Mate desktop. However, eventually the root partition got too full, and it proved to be too much hassle and too much for my not entirely Linux expert level of skill to resize. And so at that point I decided to, one, buy a new hard drive that was a larger hard drive, just because it seemed like a good time. So I upgraded to a 1 terabyte drive for the laptop, and at the same time elected to upgrade from Mint 18.3 to Mint 19.3 as it happened, which was the most up-to-date one at the time I started doing this. At least it was the most up-to-date one I was aware of at the time I started upgrading everything. And I use upgrade here in the loosest sense of the word, as we shall find out. As I've already hinted at, I guess I was late to the party with Linux Mint 19.3 since it came out in June 2018 and all this upgrading only occurred over the last month. However, until that point, 18.3 was working fine and working well. However, with one slight proviso, the older laptop that was running as a media server was actually installed with Bodhi Linux version 3.1, and I had noticed before launching all the upgrade business that it was rendering videos faster with identical hardware than the Mint 18 machine. And so on the new 1 terabyte drive, I made a small partition to run Bodhi Linux, as well as a larger partition to run Mint 19, with the idea that I could use the small Bodhi partition to do final rendering of videos faster than I could on the Mint one, if this speed difference still persisted. Now, this mention of Bodhi Linux may seem irrelevant to the subjects of this video. However, it will still come back to haunt us, as it will provide a useful comparison install later in this video when looking at the performance of Linux Mint 19. And in a related note to what I was just talking about in terms of upgrading and then downgrading, the small Bodhi install I made initially was Bodhi 5.2, but this had to be downgraded to 3.2 for similar reasons to the Mint upgrade downgrade, which is the main subject of this video. But to cut a long story short, I ended up with a dual boot with a 200 gigabyte partition for Bodhi Linux 3.2 and an 800 gigabyte partition for Linux Mint 19.3 Tricia. As a further side note, which is relevant to what's about to come up, and continuing the theme of me being late to the party, I also encountered OpenShot 2.4 for the first time, and I will be talking about that in this video. However, it already has been superseded by OpenShot 2.5, although everything about version 2.5 looks exactly the same as 2.4, so I will be talking about 2.4, but everything seems to be relevant to the latest version. Indeed, this video is as much a journey through Linux as it is a journey through OpenShot, and I may well release this video twice, one with the title involving Linux Mint, and one with the title involving OpenShot itself. Similarly, not only was I late to the party in terms of upgrading to Linux Mint 19.3, which was released in 2018, but at the time of recording of this video, it seems Linux Mint version 20 is already released. However, I imagine most of the problems I'm outlining with Linux Mint 19.3 are just as relevant with Linux Mint 20, because I can't really see them moving backwards from the problems that they've introduced with version 19. But anyway, as mentioned, I ended up with a dual boot with Bodhi 3.2 and Linux Mint 19 on my main laptop. And now we move into the reasons why it did not stay that way. Now, the main reason for having the laptop in the first place, beyond typing up things I've written and work-related tasks, is cutting together and rendering YouTube videos, such as this one. Under Linux Mint 18.3 and Bodhi Linux 3.2, as well as earlier Mint installs I've used before, they all had repositories which contained OpenShot 1.4.3. Now, OpenShot 1.4.3 is not without its problems. It is a critically flawed gem, but flaws which can be worked around, and ultimately it is an incredibly powerful video editing tool. Of its flaws, one of the most obvious was its frequent tendency to crash. In fact, it might have been more appropriately named Open Crash. Such was its reliability when it came to sustained use. However, once one got into the habit of continually saving after every edit, this could be worked around until it became habitual to have the icon to open the program on your taskbar at the bottom and to just save after every edit and then reopen after every crash, which may not sound elegant, but was at least a way to work with the software, which was itself quite powerful. Secondly, if you made a large number of cuts to a long video, the software did slow down with time to the point where you'd have to wait 20 or 30 seconds between cuts or edits before you could move on to the next edit. Now, this again is problematic, but you can get around it by cutting through to about halfway through your video, rendering that video, and then continuing your cuts with the new video, which would then go back to being editable at a high speed. Again, workarounds, inelegant, but functional, because the software, again, was incredibly easy to use, well laid out, and most importantly, very feature heavy. And by features, I mean useful editing features for videos. There were many very useful effects, a very fine level of control when it comes to cutting and manipulating sections of the video, and these features combined could lead to very subtle effects that could greatly increase the quality of the video, even though it's an open source program. And that's one of the reasons I'm using both Linux and OpenShot, because I use a lot of open source, because again, I'm a man of meager means, and open source is of course free, at least until you make a contribution, that is. Anyway, enter Linux Mint 19.3 with OpenShot 2.4. Well, it looks pretty. If you like Mac-inspired, soft and cuddly, no sharp edges and corners graphics in your user interface, then you might be perfectly happy with it, perhaps. Particularly if you find a wide range of functionality scary and overwhelming. To rather unconventionally start with the summary, OpenShot 2.4 is a pile of poo. Most of the useful effects are missing or are less easily manipulated or feature less functionality. And on top of this, the fineness of the controls for cuts was about as subtle as a sledgehammer. Now, it's possible they've made it more stable, but a more stable sledgehammer doth not an electron microscope make. The sheer number of effects in OpenShot 1.4.3 dwarfs those in OpenShot version 2.4, as does the number of transitions you can employ. Even such simple effects as brightness and contrast were, in version 1.4.3, separate effects that could be added separately and didn't have to be mushed together like the 2.4 version, and also in version 1.4.3 retained more modifiable features than the combined version in version 2.4. And then we come to the replace clip function, which in OpenShot 1.4.3, if you've got any clip within the video you're editing that you want to change for another clip, you can simply right-click on it and opt for replace and select a new file. That is how it operates on OpenShot 1.4.3. Here's how it operates in OpenShot 2.4. Oh, you can't replace clips apparently. There is no easy way of just replacing a clip. Now, this might seem trivial to some, but if you're rendering a series of videos and you're changing just one or two features of them, but otherwise the structure is the same, it's actually really useful to be able to just replace the video with the equivalent video for the new one. And to not have that feature, simple as it is incredibly irritating, time-consuming to overcome, and basically not user-friendly if you are a video editor. But that's okay. OpenShot 2.4 is not a video editing piece of software anyway. Oh, wait a minute. To compare OpenShot version 1.4.3 with OpenShot version 2.4 or higher, it's kind of like comparing Lego to Duplo, although I think that's probably being a bit unkind on Duplo. Perhaps version 2.4 is more like Playmobil in that respect. The progress in the OpenShot video editing software from 1.4.3 to 2.4 also reminds me eerily of the progress in the English and Welsh education system for the last 30 years, where the exams might look prettier these days, but the content has gone completely out of the window. Don't worry, Scotland, if you're feeling left out, your time is coming soon. To make matters even worse, it was then impossible to install the old version, OpenShot 1.4.3, on Mint 19.3, as certain dependencies could not be satisfied, at least by this humble user. Perhaps somebody who's more of a Linux expert could do this, but it was certainly not immediately obvious how it could be achieved. Luckily, upon discovering Bodhi Linux 5.3 suffered the same advantage of OpenShot 2.4, I downgraded that install to Bodhi 3.2 to match my aging media server, or at least as close as possible. The media server is actually running Bodhi Linux version 3.1.1. And happy days, I suddenly had a usable video editing environment. After repeatedly, futilely attempting to get OpenShot version 1.4.3 onto Mint 19, I eventually uninstalled OpenShot altogether on that install and used that partition for other tasks. Not, as we shall see now, audio recording as it happens. Now, when I'm recording videos, I record the audio separately through better audio equipment than is built into the laptop and straight into Audacity, which is running on the laptop. Under Mint 19.3, Audacity suddenly started to stop recording unexpectedly without warning after about 10 minutes of recording time. As mentioned, there was no warning, there was no settings. Meanwhile, under the Bodhi Linux 3.2 install on the same machine with the same program, it continued to record for whatever length of time was required, half an hour. It never terminated the recording unexpectedly on the same machine, same hardware. This is why on 2 of my most recent videos I've had to re-record sections of audio because I came to find after filming that sections of the audio were missing from Audacity and I had to redo either the spoken words or in most cases the playing of instruments all over again, which explains some of the weird out-of-sync bits in both of these videos. So Mint 19 had proved a failure when it comes to OpenShot and now a failure when it comes to Audacity, even though Audacity hadn't had the same upgrade that OpenShot had, which is how OpenShot managed to shoot itself in the foot, so to speak. But this does bring us on nicely to the final section of this video prior to the conclusion. Ah well, at least if the Linux Mint 19 partition had failed when it came to recording video and had subsequently failed when it came to recording audio, at least the system itself seemed pretty fast and stable. In my upgrade to version 19, I'd also changed from the Mate desktop environment to the XFCE lightweight desktop environment to further speed up the performance of the operating system on this laptop. And at first this seemed successful. However, as time went on, and not much time by any means, it began to get stuttery and slow. Everything was kept up to date. The majority of the 800 gigabyte partition was still empty, and therefore it wasn't as if the hard drive was suddenly getting clogged up. But this stuttery, laggy behavior was the final straw. At this point, I reinstalled Mint 18.3. So in our Hobbit-like journey, we've got to the and back again section. Although this time I did elect to install Mint 18.3 with the lightweight XFCE desktop, rather than the Mate one I had previously installed. Happy days! Back to fast, modern, stable. Audacity works normally. Tick. OpenShot installed from Software Manager 1.4.3. Tick. So now I have two OSs on my most recent Lenovo ThinkPad T410, both of which can be used for video and audio editing. Bodhi 3.2, which might be a little faster for actual rendering, so could still be very useful in that respect if I need to render something faster than I would do under the Mint 18.3 install. And then I have the Mint 18.3 install for, well, everything really. I can do my video editing, I can do my audio recording, and I can do all my normal work and writing tasks that I would normally do on the laptop besides the video editing. So, to return to my summary again, if you want to do video and audio editing and recording under Linux Mint, do not go to version 19. Avoid Linux versions which now ship with OpenShot 2.4 or anything other than 1.4.3. For example, Bodhi Linux 5.3 has this problem. Stick to stable functional OSs and software and avoid Mint 19 or higher, I suspect, with OpenShot 2.4 or higher, I suspect, like the plague. And with that warning delivered, I feel that's all we have to say on the matter. And so, to all my listeners and viewers, one final thing to say, of course, is take care.